Hello and welcome to GrizzlyReels. This is the story of the Festa Tester. So this lad Craig rents this cheap old cottage right on the edge of the Peak District. Middle o' nowhere. No Wi-Fi, no neighbours, no Deliveroo, just sheep and silence. Perfect spot to clear his head, he says. Week in, he's loving it. Bit lonely, but he's walking loads, painting, even talking to trees like a nutter. Then one night his phone rings, private number. He answers and this slow voice goes, "I am the Festa Tester, I will be there in 2 weeks." Click, Craig just laughs, thinking one of the lads is winding him up. Next week, same thing. "I am the Festa Tester, I will be there in 1 week." He's like, right, someone's having me on. He even Googles it. Nothing. No Festa Tester anywhere. He starts getting twitchy though, double locks the doors, leaves a lamp on, full Home Alone mode. Few days later, another call. "I am the Festa Tester, I will be there tomorrow." Now he's bricking it. Spends the night with a golf club next to the bed, no sleep, waiting for this psycho to rock up. Next morning, knock at the door. He creeps up, looks through the peephole, nobody there, heart pounding. He slowly opens the door and sees this tiny old bloke in a high-vis jacket holding a clipboard. The man smiles and says, "Morning, pal, I'm the Festa Tester. Here to test your septic tank, smells a bit off down the lane." Craig just stands there, half dead from fear, while the old lad hums off round the back with a wrench. So sometimes karma isn't scary, it's just the council. Thanks for watching GrizzlyReels. If you enjoyed that, please like, follow and share for more. Check out GrizzlyCollective1.com for epic artwork and apparel. And don't forget to use code at checkout for a discount. Stay tuned, more stories coming soon.
Hello and welcome to GrizzlyReels. This is the story of the pumpkin latte karma. So I was sat in Starbucks in Manchester, Deansgate, busy Saturday morning, everyone half asleep and queuing for caffeine like zombies. The lines moving slow but calm until this one bloke storms in like he owns the place. Designer coat, shades indoors, Bluetooth headset on. You know the type. Straight to the front, cuts in like the rest of us are invisible. The barista's mid-order with a lass and just stops, like, "Excuse me sir, there's a queue." He waves his hand like a traffic warden. Yeah, I'm in a rush, love. Pumpkin spice latte, extra hot, double shot, make it quick. Proper attitude. Whole shop's watching now. The lad behind me whispers, bet he drives an Audi. Anyway, barista keeps it professional, smile plastered on, makes his precious pumpkin drink. Bloke's tapping his foot, sighing like he's waiting for a miracle. Finally, they call his name, Graham, pumpkin latte. He snatches it off the counter, turns to leave, and, swear down, karma steps in. He catches his own foot on the floor mat, trips forward like he's diving for the Premier League, and that bright orange latte launches through the air like a fireball. Splashes all over his coat, his hair, everywhere. Whole place goes silent. You could hear the steam one hissing like it was laughing. Then someone at the back starts clapping. Just one slow clap. Then a few people chuckle. Even the barista can't hide the smirk. Graham stands there dripping in frothy pumpkin spice, mutters something about suing Starbucks, and storms out, leaving orange footprints all the way to the door. So sometimes you don't need to say a word. The universe sorts it for you, extra hot, with foam on top. Thanks for watching GrizzlyReels. If you enjoyed that, please like, follow, and share for more stories every week. Check out GrizzlyCollective1.com for original artwork and apparel. And don't forget to use code WELCOMEGRIES10 at checkout for a discount.
Alright people, welcome to GrizzlyReels, where real stories meet the strange and the supernatural. This one's called, "The Night I Saw Myself." Set up north in the Lake District, proper eerie one this, grab your brew and let's get into it. It was one of them cold, wet autumn nights up in Windermere. Rain tapping on the window, wind howling through the trees, and I'm half asleep on the sofa watching Most Haunted reruns on telly. You know the one, the old abandoned hospital episode that makes your skin crawl. Anyway, the credits rolled, and before I knew it, I'd nodded off under a blanket. Sometime later, I woke up. The TV was just static now, that grey fuzz humming low in the background. The whole room felt wrong. Quiet. Still. Like the air was holding its breath. I got up, wandered to the bathroom, half asleep, lights off, just that soft hallway glow. But when I got there, nothing. Didn't even need to go. Weird, I thought. Proper weird. So I turned around to head upstairs to bed. But halfway up the stairs, I froze. Something didn't feel right, you know that gut feeling, like someone's eyes are on you. I crept back down, slow. Every step felt heavier. And when I looked into the living room, my stomach just dropped. Because there I was. Still asleep. Curled up on the same sofa I just stood up from. Blanket pulled up to my chin. Chest rising and falling. The TV static flickering over my own face. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. It was like staring at a ghost, my ghost. And then, black. Nothing. Next thing I knew, it was morning. Sunlight peeking through the curtains like nothing had happened. Dream or not. I can still see it clear as day. They say if you ever see yourself outside your body, it means you've stepped between life and death. And that night, I swear down. I wasn't alone. Cheers for watching, legends, that one gave me chills. If you liked this story, make sure you smash that like button, follow GrizzlyReels for more real-life spine tinglers, and share it with your mates who love a good scare. And if you're into art and design, check out grizzlycollective1.com, use code WELCOMEGRIES10 for a discount at checkout. Stay spooky, stay sharp, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Alright people, welcome back to GrizzlyReels, where real stories meet fate, luck, and the madness of life itself. This one's called The Lost Wallet, a proper heart-warmer with a twist of karma. Set right here in Manchester, this one proves sometimes the universe really does look after the right people. It was a cold Thursday morning in Didsbury, that crisp kind of morning where your breath fogs up in front of you, the kind of day that smells like coffee, wet leaves, and fresh starts. There's this lad, Jamie, mid-20s, grafting hard, but life hadn't been kind lately. Lost his job, rent overdue, electric on its last legs. You know the score. But he still got up early, walked to the cafe every morning, and bought the cheapest brew on the menu just to keep his routine. That morning he sat by the window in his scruffy grey hoodie, staring out at the buses going by. Rain drizzling down the glass, proper gloomy. He checks his pockets, empty. Not a tenner to his name, but he still tips the barista his last few coins, said, "Keep it, love, everyone's struggling these days." As he's leaving, he spots an old bloke struggling in the rain. Umbrella snapped, carrier bag split, wallet lying face down on the pavement. Jamie picks it up, shouts after him, "Mate, you dropped this." The old fella turns around, soaked to the bone but smiling, proper kind eyes. "Thank you, lad," he says. Most people would have kept it. He offers him a fiver for his honesty, but Jamie laughs it off, says, "Keep it, pal, you might need it more than me." Jamie heads home, same four walls, same stress, same silence. He checks his phone, one missed call from a number he doesn't know. He rings it back. "Hi, is this Jamie Carter?" "Yes." "This is Sarah from Didsbury Cafe. That old gentleman you helped earlier, he left something for you." Jamie walks back, half thinking it's a joke, but behind the counter, the barista hands him an envelope. Inside, a letter and a check, 10 grand. Turns out the old bloke was a retired business owner, said Jamie's honesty reminded him of himself when he was young. Wrote, "The world needs more people like you, use this to change yours." And from that day on, he did. Paid off his debts, started a small coffee stand, and every morning since, he's bought someone else's drink without saying a word. Sometimes good luck doesn't just happen. Sometimes it waits for the right person to deserve it. Cheers for watching, legends. If that one hit you in the chest, smash that like button, follow GrizzlyReels for more real stories that prove karma's alive and well, and share it with someone who needs a bit of faith in the world again. And don't forget, check out grizzlycollective1.com for exclusive designs and art. Use code for 10% off at checkout. Keep the faith, stay solid, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Alright legends, welcome back to GrizzlyReels, where the stories hit deeper than the cold up on the hills. Tonight's tale's called The Lights Above Kinda More. It's about one night camping out in the Peak District that turned into something straight out of a nightmare, or maybe something not of this world. It was late September, right before the frost started biting. 3 mates, me, Connor, and Big Tom, decided to go wild camping up near Kinda Scout. No phone signal, no noise, just the moors, the mist, and a bottle of cheap whiskey to keep warm. By midnight the fog had rolled in thick, proper heavy, that kind that swallows sound. You could barely see the tent 5 feet away. We'd been laughing, telling ghost stories, just messing about when everything suddenly went dead quiet. No wind. No sheep. No nothing. Then, hum. Low, steady, vibrating through the ground like the earth itself had a heartbeat. Connor thought it was a plane, but it weren't moving. The sound didn't fade. It just stayed, deep and strange. We stepped outside the tent. The mist glowed. A pale blue light pulsed above us, like it was inside the fog, not shining through it, but alive in it. Big Tom, being the madman he is, waved his torch up and shouted, "Oi! What you looking at?" Trying to be funny. The second his torch hit that light, everything went white. No sound. No ground. Just this weightless, spinning feeling, like my insides were floating away. When I came to, I was flat on my back in the grass, but everything was wrong. The air was sharp, electric. The sky shimmered green at the edges like northern lights gone mad. Connor was standing frozen, staring straight up. And Tom, he was gone. We searched till sunrise. Found the tent half melted, like the fabric had been heated from the inside out. No tracks, no prints, just that smell of metal and ozone that clung to everything. At dawn, as the fog lifted, we finally saw something in the distance, a perfect black circle burned into the heather. Dead silent. Dead still. And right there, in the center, Tom's phone. Screen cracked, camera open. The last photo showed nothing but a blinding white flash. We told the mountain rescue lads what happened. They laughed, said it was lightning or sleep paralysis. But they couldn't explain the circle. They couldn't explain the melted tent. And they sure as hell couldn't explain why Tom never came back up there again. To this day, when you walk those moors at night, some hikers still say they hear that same low hum in the fog. And if you ever see a pale blue light drifting over the ridge, turn around. Because once it sees you, it never really lets you go. Cheers for watching, legends. If that one gave you chills, hit that like button, follow GrizzlyReels for more real, raw, and eerie UK encounters, and tag your mate who'd still camp there after hearing this. And don't forget, check out grizzlycollective1.com for exclusive art and designs.
Alright legends, welcome back to GrizzlyReels, your weekly shot of madness, motivation, and stories that make you feel something. This one's called The Climb of Ben Torren. It's a story about courage, heartbreak, and never backing down, even when life's trying to throw you off the mountain. It starts up in the Scottish Highlands, the kind of place where the mist moves like ghosts and the silence hums in your chest. There's this lad, Callum Fraser, from Fort William. Worked construction, strong lad, always smiling, but the world hit him hard. Lost his dad suddenly, the kind of loss that rips the fight right out of you. For months, he stopped going out, stopped seeing his mates, just drifted. Then one morning, he found an old hiking map tucked inside his dad's toolbox. On the back, written in pen, "One day, we'll climb Ben Torren together." Thing was, they never did. So Callum made a promise. He'd climb that mountain alone. Not for glory, not for show. Just to finish what his dad started. He set off at dawn, heavy rucksack, freezing air biting at his hands. The locals told him the path was dangerous that time of year. Snow, wind, ice, pure madness. But he went anyway. Halfway up, the weather turned savage. Fog so thick you could taste it. Wind howling like the mountain didn't want him there. He slipped more than once, cut his knee open, nearly turned back. But then he remembered what his dad used to say, "Son, if you stop halfway, you'll never see the view that changes everything." So he kept going, one step at a time, breath after breath. Every muscle burning, every part of him screaming to quit. And then, through the cloud, he saw it. The summit. The world stretched out below him, locks like silver mirrors, peaks glowing gold in the sunrise. He took out the old photo of his dad, set it on a rock, and said quietly, "We made it, old man." That moment changed him. He came back down a different person. Within a year, he started his own hiking group for lads struggling with grief, called it the Ben Torren Brotherhood. What started with one climb became a movement that's helped hundreds of people face their own mountains. And that, my friends, is what Monday's about. It's not about being fearless, it's about climbing anyway. Even when your legs shake. Even when the world feels heavy. Because sometimes, at the top of your hardest climb, you don't just find the view, you find yourself. Cheers for listening, legends. If this one hit you, hit that like button, follow GrizzlyReels for more real-life stories of grit, glory, and growth, and tag someone who needs a push this week. And don't forget, check out GrizzlyCollective1.com for powerful designs built on stories like this. Use code at checkout. Stay strong, stay climbing. I'll catch you at the top.
Alright legends, welcome back to GrizzlyReels, where the stories are wild, real, and sometimes proper ridiculous. This one's called The Bus of Pigs, a tale of breakfast chaos, cranky passengers, and a bloke who definitely shouldn't be trusted with a hose. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in Leicester. I was staying at this cheap little travelodge on the outskirts of town, you know the kind, fluorescent lights, dodgy Wi-Fi, and that faint smell of old fry-ups lingering in the air. I wandered into the breakfast area, got myself a tepid coffee, and noticed a man on the phone sitting opposite me, proper serious tone, nodding as he talked. I overheard bits of the conversation. "Yeah, yesterday got messy, lost a bit of time, passengers were cranky, had to stop at a service station, hosed them down with cold water." I nearly spit out my coffee. I glanced outside the window and noticed a bright yellow school bus parked out front, definitely not there yesterday. When the bloke ended his call, curiosity got the better of me. I leaned over, trying to act casual. "Excuse me, that bus out there, yours?" He looked me dead in the eye, gave a cheeky grin, and said, "Nope, I'm in the back with a truckload of pigs." I nearly fell off my chair laughing. "Pigs?" I asked, pointing at the bus. "Yeah," he shrugged, "you know, squeaky, grumpy little bastards. Don't get me started, today's going smooth so far." By now, the breakfast staff were giving me funny looks because I was chuckling like a loon. The guy just sipped his black coffee, looking like nothing unusual had happened. And the bus, still there, still bright yellow, still mysterious. Turns out he was a local farmer moving pigs across town, but the way he described it, I swear it sounded like a full-on pig heist movie. Cranky passengers, hoses, lost time, the whole shebang. I left that travelodge shaking my head, thinking, only in England, only in Leicester. Moral of the story: life's better with a bit of chaos, a good laugh, and never underestimate a bloke with a hose and a truckload of pigs. Cheers for watching, legends. If that one cracked you up, smash that like button, follow GrizzlyReels for more real-life ridiculousness, and tag your mate who'd lose it if they were in the back of that bus. Check out GrizzlyCollective1.com for epic art and apparel, and use code for a discount at checkout. Stay sharp, stay laughing, and never trust a man on a bus with pigs.
All right, legends, welcome back to GrizzlyReels. And since it's spooky season, we've got a proper eerie one tonight. This story's called The Ghost of Elsie. It's set in a quiet little town just outside of Sheffield, where the moors meet the mist, and where the past doesn't always stay buried. When we were kids, my little sister had this imaginary friend called E. She'd sit on the floor, talking to thin air for hours, telling us about an old lady with silver hair and a blue dress who lived in the house before us. We thought nothing of it. Kids have imaginary mates all the time, right? But then, around age 4, she just stopped. No more talking to the corner. We shrugged it off and moved on. Fast forward 6 years. It's a cold November night, proper dark, rain tapping the windows. Mum got a sudden call. Grandad had taken a turn in the nursing home up in Rotherham, so she and Dad flew out the door, told us they'd be back later. It was just me and my sister at home. I was in the living room watching the Bill reruns on telly, dead quiet, just the hum of the radiators, when suddenly, from our bedroom at the end of the hall, the old radio started crackling. Click. It turned on. Then full volume. Then down again. Then off. Then on again. 3 times in a row. Now this wasn't one of those modern DAB radios. It was an old chunky Roberts one, proper vintage. So I stomped down the hallway ready to tell my sister to pack it in. But when I opened the door, she was sat on the bed, pale as chalk, eyes wide, shaking. I looked at the radio. No plug. No batteries. Nothing. I said, "How the hell's it done that?" And she whispers, "It was her." I said, "Who?" And she goes, voice trembling, I saw her, she was stood right next to the radio, smiling. The room felt icy, like all the heat had been sucked out. I grabbed the duvet and dragged her out of there, shaking. I rang Mum straight away, and I'll never forget what she said. Her voice was cracking. She said, "I'm so sorry, love, your granddad's just passed away." My stomach dropped. I didn't say a word about the radio. A few days later, at the funeral, one of Mum's cousins handed her an old photo she'd found in a box, black and white, from their wedding day. And my sister points at the bride and says, "That's her, that's E. It was my grandma, Elsie. She died when Mum was 11, before either of us were born." And here's the kicker, we'd never seen a single photo of her before that day. Our step-gran had thrown every picture away when she moved into the house years later. We still live there now. Every so often, when it's quiet, I'll swear I hear that faint click of the radio from the other room. Never any music, just static and that cold, heavy silence. Thanks for watching, legends. If that one gave you chills, drop a like, follow GrizzlyReels, and share it with your mate who loves a proper spooky story. Check out grizzlycollective1.com for original UK artwork and apparel. Use code for 10% off at checkout. Stay safe, keep the lights on, and maybe, just maybe, check if your radio's really unplugged.
Alright legends, welcome back to GrizzlyReels, where every story's got a twist, and this one will have you watching your clock before bed. It's called The Clock at Palmyra Bay. Grab a brew or something stronger, because this one's eerie, funny, and properly messed up. It all kicked off down in Cornwall, right on the coast near a tiny fishing village called Palmyra Bay, the kind of place that smells like seaweed, diesel, and secrets. Our main lad, Liam Frost, 28, marine electrician from Bristol, had booked himself a week off, just him, his van, and a cheap Airbnb cottage perched on a cliff edge. No phone signal, no stress, and a promise to himself. No work calls, no drama, just football, fish and chips, and pints at the Drunken Seagull. The cottage was proper old, beams older than his granddad, and furniture that looked nicked from a museum. But what really caught his eye was this massive grandfather clock on the mantelpiece. It didn't tick right. Every night, bang on midnight, it'd go tick, tick, tick 3 times, then stop. No chime, no pendulum, just 3 lonely ticks like it was testing him. Fast forward to Thursday night. Liam sat there, halfway through a lukewarm pint, watching Europa League highlights, moaning at the telly. Typical United can't defend a throw-in to save their lives. He's mid-rant when it happens again. Tick, tick, tick. He looks up, the clock hands start spinning backwards. At first, he thinks maybe the electrics are dodgy, Cornwall weather, and all that. Then he realizes the telly's frozen. The room's gone dead silent. Even the sea, which had been roaring all week, has stopped. He walks to the window, pulls back the curtain, and outside, the whole bay's covered in fog. Not normal fog either, thick, glowing, alive. Down below, faint orange lights shimmer through it, like lanterns bobbing on the tide. And somewhere in the distance, voices. Low, muffled, old-fashioned voices. Liam mutters, "What the bloody hell," grabs his torch and steps outside. The air hits him like ice. He follows the sound down the cliff path, trainers slipping on wet stone, heart hammering. At the bottom, on the beach, he sees them, people. A full crew of fishermen, standing by wooden boats that look straight out of a museum. Long coats, flat caps, and oil lamps glowing amber. They're shouting to each other in thick Cornish accents, hauling crates marked Palmier Catch, 1879. One bloke turns and stares right at him. "You're late, boy," he growls. "Tide, going." Liam blinks. "Mate, what tide? What year is it?" The man squints, lantern flickering across his pale face. "Same every time," he mutters. "You never learn, do you?" Before Liam can answer, the fog swirls up, thick as smoke, and the beach folds in on itself. He hears water rushing, a roar like a storm, and then he's back, flat on the cottage floor. Europa League highlights still on pause, pints spilled across the rug. The clock reads 2:19 a.m. His phone's dead. No power. And his boots caked in wet sand. Next morning, he stumbles into the drunken seagull, looking rough as anything. Old Dory's behind the bar says, "You look like you've seen a ghost, love." He tells her what happened, laughing it off until she goes pale. She disappears into the back and brings out a framed photo covered in dust. "Recognize him?" she asks. It's a sepia photo, a group of 6 fishermen beside a wrecked boat. Front and center is a man who looks exactly like Liam. Below the photo, Captain Elias Frost, lost to the sea, November 1879. Dories leans in. They say he washes back up every few decades, never quite on time. Liam left Palmier Bay that morning and never came back. But the locals still swear that when the fog rolls in and the tide's low, you can hear footsteps on the cliffs and a voice whispering, "It's not again." So if you ever stay down Cornwall way, and you hear a clock tick 3 times when it should, maybe don't check the window. Thanks for watching, legends. If that one gave you chills, smash that like button, follow GrizzlyReels for more twisted UK stories, and tag your mate who'd 100% leg it after the first tick. Check out grizzlycollective1.com for original art and apparel, and use for 10% off. Stay curious, stay safe, and keep your clocks where you can see 'em. Hello and welcome back to GrizzlyReels, where real stories meet a twist of fate and a bit of northern banter. Today's story is one for anyone who's had a rough week and needs reminding that sometimes luck has a funny way of showing up. This is the story of the Lucky Fiver. It was a typical Friday in Manchester. Grey clouds hung low over the city, buses splashing through puddles, and that familiar hum of people just trying to make it through the last stretch of the working week. Our lad Danny Miller was one of them. He just clocked off from a long week at a warehouse job that paid little but demanded plenty. Payday had come and gone, most of it swallowed by bills and rent. His trainers were scuffed, his coat had lost its zip, and his mood matched the weather. Danny trudged through Piccadilly Gardens, head down, rain dripping from his hood. He muttered to himself, half laughing, half groaning, "If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all." As if the world heard him, a sudden gust of wind rushed through the square. Out of nowhere, something smacked him in the leg. He looked down. A £5 note clung to his jeans, flapping in the wind like it had been sent there on purpose. He picked it up, looked around to see if anyone was claiming it, then shrugged. "Cheers, universe," he said quietly, tucking it into his pocket. Most people would have spent it on a coffee or a chippy tea, but Danny fancied a bit of fun. On the corner by the bus stop was a little off-license, the kind that smells faintly of dust and old magazines. He walked in, grabbed a Lucasade, and spotted the stack of scratch cards by the till. "Go on then," he said. "Let's tempt fate." He handed over the £5, took his change, and stepped outside to scratch it under the bus shelter while the rain drizzled down around him. The first box, nothing. The second, another blank. The third box revealed something different. His thumb froze. He blinked twice, then read it again. £500 winner. Danny stared at it for a good 10 seconds, convinced he was seeing things. Then it hit him. He let out a bark of laughter that made the woman next to him jump. He ran back into the shop shouting, "Mate, check this, I've actually won something." The shopkeeper took one look, nodded and said, "Looks like your luck's turned, lad." By the time Danny reached the Black Dog pub, the story had already spread. His mates were there, pints in hand, and he burst through the door waving the winning ticket. "Drinks are on me, boys." The universe finally coughed up. They cheered, clapping him on the back, laughing at his ridiculous luck. That night, the laughter spilled out onto the street. Danny told the story over and over, about the fiver that hit him in the leg, the scratch card, the bus shelter, the rain. And as the night wound down, he slipped the ticket back into his wallet and whispered, "Let's see what next Friday brings." He walked home under the streetlights, that same drizzle falling, but it didn't bother him anymore. For once, everything felt right. Maybe luck wasn't just about chance. Maybe it was about being open to the small, silly, unexpected moments that remind you life's still got some good left in it. So next time you think the world's got it in for you, keep your eyes open. You never know when a fiver might smack you in the leg and change your whole day. Thank you for watching Grizzly Reels. If you enjoyed this story, please like, follow, and share it with someone who needs a bit of Friday luck. For more original stories, visit grizzlycollective.com and use at checkout for 10% off your first order.
Hello and welcome back to Grizzly Reels, where real stories meet a twist of fate, and even the worst Mondays can turn into something magic. This one's about bad luck, stubbornness, and a lad who found his win when the whole world seemed to be taking the piss. This is The Broken Boot and the Big Break. It was one of those cold, wet Mondays in Birmingham, the kind that makes you question every life choice you've ever made. Rain coming in sideways, traffic crawling, and the city centre already choked with umbrellas and misery. Our man, Connor Doyle, was running late for work again. His alarm hadn't gone off, his bus was cancelled, and his right boot had split straight across the sole. Every step was a squelch, every thought a curse. He worked as a delivery lad for a local florist, not glamorous, not great pay, but it kept him afloat. And today, his boss, a no-nonsense woman named Sandra, had already sent him a message that simply said, "If you're late again, don't bother coming in." So Connor legged it down Broad Street in the rain, trying to avoid puddles, muttering under his breath. Halfway there, the strap on his bag snapped. Flowers spilled everywhere. Roses, lilies, carnations, all scattered across the pavement. A few people just stepped around him. One bloke laughed. He knelt there in the pouring rain, soaked through, surrounded by ruined bouquets, and thought, "Yeah, perfect Monday." Then this older woman appeared, smart coat, calm voice, and helped him gather the flowers. She smiled and said, "You look like you've had one of those days, love." He laughed bitterly. "You could say that. Just lost me job, by the looks of it." She handed him a rose and said, "Then maybe it's time for something new." Connor didn't think much of it. He thanked her, got to work late, and, as expected, Sandra told him he was done. He left with nothing but a plastic bag of soggy flowers and a half-broken umbrella. He decided to stop at the cafe on the corner before heading home, just to dry off and think. As he sat there staring at his phone, the same woman from earlier walked in, the one who'd helped him. She saw him, smiled again, and walked over. "You really don't give up, do you?" "No point," he shrugged. "Might as well keep going till something sticks." She paused, then said, "I run the hotel 2 streets down. We've got an opening for someone reliable in our events team. Fancy an interview right now?" Connor blinked, half laughing. "You're joking." She wasn't. They sat down for 10 minutes. She liked his attitude. By the end of that cup of tea, she said the words that flipped his whole week. "You're hired. Start tomorrow." He walked out of that cafe with no job to go back to, one ruined pair of boots, and the biggest grin he'd worn in months. That night, he told his mum the whole story, still dripping from the rain, and she said, "See? Sometimes life just needs to break something to let something better in. So next time it all goes wrong."
Hello and welcome to Grizzly Reels. Today's story is called The Lucky Detour. It was a wet, miserable afternoon in Leeds, the kind where the sky can't decide whether it's rain or fog, and the traffic's crawling like it's got nowhere better to be. Liam, delivery driver, was having a proper nightmare of a day. Every light was red, his wipers were squeaking like they were mocking him, and his sat-nav decided it fancied a holiday, rerouting him down random backstreets. He ended up stuck behind a van that had broken down across the road, completely blocking his usual shortcut. Fuming, he pulled into a little roadside cafe he'd never noticed before, Brew and Bite, a tiny place with steamed-up windows and the smell of toast wafting out. He stomped in, muttering to himself about how the universe must hate him, and ordered a tea just to calm down. Behind the counter was a young woman named Rosie. She had that kind of smile that made the day feel less heavy. They got chatting. She'd just started working there, saving up for art school. She laughed about how grim the weather was and said, "At least we've got brews, love, that's half the battle won." Liam left feeling a bit lighter. As he went to get back in his van, Rosie ran out with his change, a £1 coin. He waved it off, saying, "Keep it, maybe that's my luck turning." The next day, same traffic jam, same blocked road. He thought sod it and stopped in again. Rosie was there, beaming, holding up a napkin with a sketch of his van on it. "For the unlucky driver," she said. That became his new stop, rain or shine. Over the weeks, they talked about music, bad customers, and big dreams. 6 months later, Liam wasn't just delivering parcels, he was planning a trip to Italy with Rosie, the girl who drew on napkins and turned his worst workday into the best twist of his life. Sometimes, the detours you curse end up being the best turns you'll ever take. Thanks for watching Grizzly Reels. If you enjoyed this story, please like, follow, and share, and check out grizzlycollective1.com for our latest artwork and apparel drops. Use code WELCOMEGRIES10 at checkout for 10% off your first order.
Hello and welcome to Grizzly Reels. Today's story is called The Underdog's Game. It was a chilly Saturday morning in Stockport, the kind where your breath hangs in the air and your boots are already muddy before kickoff. Jack, a 14-year-old lad with a heart full of fire and legs that never seemed to stop, stood at the edge of the pitch gripping his water bottle, staring at the opposition warming up. They looked twice his size, clean kits, matching boots, proper academy lads. Jack wasn't built like that. He was the smallest on his team, but the one who trained the hardest. Every evening after school, he'd be down the park till the streetlights came on, practicing stepovers and free kicks while his mates played Xbox. His mum used to shout from the window, "Jack! It's dark, get in!" But he'd always sneak in one more shot. That weekend was the big one, the Regional Youth Cup final. His coach, a proper old-school bloke named Kev, gathered the team before kickoff under the rattling tin shelter by the river. "Listen up, lads," Kev said, pacing like he was about to go to war. "You don't have to be the biggest or the strongest. You've just got to be brave. Bravery isn't about not being scared, it's about playing your heart out, even when you are." The whistle blew, and it was chaos. The other team were slick, fast, clinical, and within 20 minutes, Jack's side were 1-0 down. Rain started to spit, parents shouting from the sidelines, boots sliding in the mud. But Jack didn't stop running. Every tackle, every chase, every loose ball, he was there. Then, with 2 minutes left, the ball broke loose near halfway. Jack didn't think, he just moved. He nicked it off their midfielder and tore down the wing, boots splashing through the mud, lungs burning. One defender came at him, he feinted right, went left. Another dived in, he skipped over the slide. The goal opened up like a dream. "Go on, lad," someone yelled from the sidelines. Jack struck it clean. The ball curved through the air, spinning past the keeper's outstretched glove, and hit the back of the net. The pitch exploded. His teammates piled on top of him, Coach Kev was jumping like a madman, and Jack just lay there in the mud, grinning, half laughing, half crying. After the match, Kev pulled him aside. "That," he said, clapping him on the shoulder, "is bravery. Not the goal, but the belief to try when everyone thinks you're done." From that day on, Jack trained harder than ever. He didn't just dream about football, he lived it. Because in that moment, on that muddy pitch in Stockport, a little lad with a big heart proved that courage can be louder than talent. Thanks for watching Grizzly Reels. If you enjoyed this story, please like, follow, and share, and check out grizzlycollective1.com for our latest artwork and apparel drops. Use code WELCOMEGRIES10 at checkout for 10% off your first order. Hello and welcome to Grizzly Reels. Today's story is called The Underdog's Game. It was a chilly Saturday morning in Stockport, the kind where your breath hangs in the air and your boots are already muddy before kickoff. Jack, a 14-year-old lad with a heart full of fire and legs that never seemed to stop, stood at the edge of the pitch gripping his water bottle, staring at the opposition warming up. They looked twice his size, clean kits, matching boots, proper academy lads. Jack wasn't built like that. He was the smallest on his team, but the one who trained the hardest. Every evening after school, he'd be down the park till the streetlights came on, practicing stepovers and free kicks while his mates played Xbox. His mum used to shout from the window, "Jack! It's dark, get in!" But he'd always sneak in one more shot. That weekend was the big one, the Regional Youth Cup final. His coach, a proper old-school bloke named Kev, gathered the team before kickoff under the rattling tin shelter by the river. "Listen up, lads," Kev said, pacing like he was about to go to war. "You don't have to be the biggest or the strongest. You've just got to be brave. Bravery isn't about not being scared, it's about playing your heart out, even when you are." The whistle blew, and it was chaos. The other team were slick, fast, clinical, and within 20 minutes, Jack's side were 1-0 down. Rain started to spit, parents shouting from the sidelines, boots sliding in the mud. But Jack didn't stop running. Every tackle, every chase, every loose ball, he was there. Then, with 2 minutes left, the ball broke loose near halfway. Jack didn't think, he just moved. He nicked it off their midfielder and tore down the wing, boots splashing through the mud, lungs burning. One defender came at him, he feinted right, went left. Another dived in, he skipped over the slide. The goal opened up like a dream. "Go on, lad," someone yelled from the sidelines. Jack struck it clean. The ball curved through the air, spinning past the keeper's outstretched glove, and hit the back of the net. The pitch exploded. His teammates piled on top of him, Coach Kev was jumping like a madman, and Jack just lay there in the mud, grinning, half laughing, half crying. After the match, Kev pulled him aside. "That," he said, clapping him on the shoulder, "is bravery. Not the goal, but the belief to try when everyone thinks you're done." From that day on, Jack trained harder than ever. He didn't just dream about football, he lived it. Because in that moment, on that muddy pitch in Stockport, a little lad with a big heart proved that courage can be louder than talent. Thanks for watching Grizzly Reels. If you enjoyed this story, please like, follow, and share, and check out grizzlycollective1.com for our latest artwork and apparel drops. Use code WELCOMEGRIES10 at checkout for 10% off your first order.
Hello and welcome to Grizzly Reels. Today's story is called The Lost Expedition. It started as a dream trip for mates from Manchester who fancied themselves a bit of adventure. Tom, Jamie, Connor, and Rick, lifelong friends who'd grown up hiking the Lake District and camping in the peaks, decided they were ready for something bigger. So they booked a once-in-a-lifetime expedition to the Amazon rainforest, joining a small group of explorers led by a local guide named Raphael. At first, it was all excitement, monkeys overhead, endless green stretching to the horizon, and nights filled with the hum of 1,000 insects. But the deeper they went, the more the jungle seemed to swallow them whole. One morning, after a violent storm ripped through their camp, the group got separated. Radios soaked, compass smashed, they were alone, miles from base, with no clue which way was out. For days, they followed a river, figuring water always leads to life. But food ran out, and tempers flared. Tom tried to keep spirits up, cracking jokes about Greg's and Premier League results, but the fear was setting in. Then Jack, the youngest of the group, started to fall ill. Feverish, pale, barely standing. The others argued. Rick said they had to move faster or they'd all die out there. Jamie refused to leave him. Tom stepped in, saying, "We came in together, we leave together." End of. They carried Jack between them, hacking through vines and sludge until they reached a small waterfall. There, among the rocks, grew a cluster of strange, bright orange fruit. None of them had seen anything like it. It looked almost glowing under the canopy. Starving, they decided to risk it. To their shock, it wasn't poisonous. In fact, it gave them a rush of energy, sharper senses, like their bodies had just rebooted. The next day, they came across a pack of wild boars blocking the riverbank. Snorting, tusks flashing, but when the wind shifted, the animals bolted. That's when they realized the fruit scent was repelling them. Armed with this weird new discovery, they pressed on. After what felt like weeks, their feet bleeding and clothes torn, they spotted smoke rising over the trees. A village. Children ran to greet them, and the locals, far from hostile, welcomed them in, fed them, and treated Jack's fever with herbs that smelt of mint and earth. When the rest of their expedition finally found them days later, the villagers explained that the fruit they'd eaten was sacred, a rare gift from the forest known as the Heart of Fire. They'd survived by luck, bravery, and a bit of rainforest magic. When they finally returned home to Manchester, they weren't just four mates with a story, they were living proof that courage, friendship, and instinct can carry you through the darkest places on Earth. Thanks for watching Grizzly Reels. If you enjoyed this story, please like, follow, and share, and check out GrizzlyCollective1.com for our latest artwork and apparel.
Hello and welcome to Grizzly Reels. Today's story is called The Weekend Turnaround. It was a bleak Monday morning in Sheffield, the kind where the clouds hang low and everyone walks a bit slower, still half asleep from the weekend. Our lad, Ethan Shaw, dragged himself out of bed with the enthusiasm of a wet sock. He'd had what he thought was a cracking weekend. Big night out Saturday, football Sunday, a few too many pints, and a taxi ride home he barely remembered. By Monday, reality hit. Wallet gone, bank card gone, his favorite jacket ripped right down the sleeve. And worst of all, his boss had already texted, "We need to talk." Perfect. Ethan slogged to work looking like he'd fought his own washing machine. In the break room, he started telling the lads what happened, how some bloke at the pub had shoved past him at the bar, pinched his seat, knocked over his drink, and then laughed in his face. Ethan hadn't started anything, but he'd been fuming about it all weekend. That same bloke, the lad with the slick haircut and the designer jacket. He turned up again. At 8:55 a.m. Walking through the doors of Ethan's workplace, a big warehouse on the outskirts of town. Ethan froze. Nah, surely not. The man walked straight to the manager's office. Ethan thought, great, he probably works here. Karma doesn't exist. Life's just taking the mick. But karma had been listening. 5 minutes later, the manager called everyone to the front of the warehouse. "We've had complaints about a vehicle parked illegally across the staff entrance," she said. "Can the owner of the black BMW please step forward?" Out stepped slick haircut, same lad from the pub. Everyone watched. He clicked his fob, smirked, and walked out to move it. Seconds later, the towing truck turned the corner. The driver leaned out the window. "You the owner? Sorry mate, you blocked the fire access. This one's already booked in." The bloke exploded, shouting, swearing, demanding they drop it. The tow driver simply said, "Should have thought about that before parking like a weapon." Every worker on break watched his BMW get winched up and hauled off the yard. Absolute poetry. As he stormed back inside, he caught sight of Ethan across the floor, and recognition hit him. Ethan just smiled. Didn't need to say a word. Later that afternoon, while Ethan was eating a soggy tuna sandwich and feeling sorry for himself, the receptionist came over holding something. A wallet. His wallet. Turns out a taxi driver had found it wedged under the back seat and dropped it off at reception. Card still there, cash still inside, even the stupid photo booth picture from years ago. And that meeting with the boss turned out to be nothing bad. She called him in to offer extra hours and a small bump in pay because someone had quit that morning. Someone who'd been oddly rude to everyone. Ethan left work that day with his wallet back, a better job, and the image of that BMW being carted away still living rent-free in his head. That's the thing about karma, it doesn't ring a bell, it doesn't announce itself. It just waits for the perfect moment to level the score. Thanks for watching Grizzly Reels. If you enjoyed this story, please like, follow, and share, and check out GrizzlyCollective.com for our latest artwork and apparel drops. Use code at checkout for 10% off your first order.
Hello and welcome to Grizzly Reels. Today's story is called The Thing in Foxwell Woods. This one came straight from a delivery driver telling his mate in the wagon on a Tuesday morning. Rain on the windscreen, engine humming, both of them half awake while he swore blind that what he was about to say actually happened. It was late autumn in Northamptonshire. Jack and three mates had gone camping in Foxwell Woods for a quiet weekend away. The type of trip lads do when they want a fire, a few cans, and a break from graft. They hiked deep into the woods, set up camp, and spent the night talking rubbish around the flames. But Jack said something felt off from the start. The trees were too still. The air too cold. Even the usual animal noises were missing. He stayed awake long after the others had passed out. That was when he heard the growl. Low, heavy, not from any normal woodland creature. A huge shape moved just beyond the firelight. Tall, wide, almost gliding between the trees. Jack panicked, grabbed a branch and hurled it. The thud that followed was real enough to wake the others, and that was when they all saw it step into view. 8 feet tall. Skin grey-green like old stone. Eyes glowing yellow. Claws long enough to slice through bark. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if deciding which one of them it wanted first. The lads were frozen. Just as the creature tensed to spring, a figure emerged from the darkness. A man in full camouflage carrying a rifle with a scope. Calm as anything, he fired once. The creature dropped instantly, twitching on the ground before going still. The man told them they were deep inside restricted land and lucky to still be breathing. He ordered them to pack up and leave the area immediately before anyone else turned up. By the next day, Foxwell Woods was closed off with fencing and signs claiming maintenance issues. No one in town explained why. No one admitted anything had happened. Jack finished telling the story in the wagon. His mate didn't believe a word of it. He just laughed. Jack shrugged and said the woods were sealed off for a reason and he wasn't going back to find out why. Thanks for watching Grizzly Reels. If you enjoyed this story, please like, follow, and share, and check out GrizzlyCollective.com for original artwork and apparel. Use welcome EGRIS10 for 10% off your first order. Hello and welcome to Grizzly Reels, the home of real stories, twists, and UK drama told with heart. Sit back, get comfy, and let's get into today's story. It was mid-November in York, bitter cold, damp air drifting through the narrow streets of the Shambles. 2 lads headed home after a late shift, Lewis, big as a wardrobe, and Callum, quick-minded and quiet. Brains and brawn. The perfect pair. As they crossed the market square, they saw an elderly woman at the cash machine, struggling with her bags. Before they reached her, 2 masked lads rushed in, grabbed her handbag, and sprinted down one of the twisting medieval alleys. Lewis went to charge straight after them, but Callum grabbed his arm. He knew York's backstreets better than anyone. No point chasing them blind. You catch thieves in York by thinking, not running. He dragged Lewis down a shortcut only locals ever used, a tight stone passage that cut 3 streets ahead. Boots echoing off wet cobblestones, they emerged exactly where Callum predicted. And there they were, the 2 thieves hurtling toward them, not expecting anyone to be waiting. Lewis stepped forward, blocking the entire alley with his frame. The look on the thieves' faces said everything. Before it turned messy, Callum used the only weapon he needed, his mouth. He shouted down the street that police were coming from both directions, that CCTV had caught everything, that they had nowhere to run. It was all bluff, but convincing enough. The thieves panicked, dropped the bag, and bolted the opposite way. They sprinted straight into two off-duty PCSOs who'd heard the shouting and were heading over. Wrong alley, wrong night, wrong lads to rob near. Lewis and Callum took the bag back to the woman. Everything was untouched: purse, bank card, even the packet of chocolate digestives she'd bought for her grandson. She tried to pay them, tried to thank them properly, but they refused. They just walked her home safely and disappeared into the night. By the next morning, the story had spread across York. Two normal lads stopping a robbery without swinging a single punch. One thinking ahead, one standing firm. A mix of cunning and strength that worked better than anything the thieves expected. And Callum? He never admitted he hadn't actually called the police. He just knew the thieves would believe it. Smart minds and steady hands, that's how real heroes move. Thanks for listening to Grizzly Reels. If you enjoyed this story, like, follow, and share for more. Check out GrizzlyCollective1.com for artwork and apparel, and use Welcome Egries 10 for 10% off your first order.
The Bristol Bus Stop Miracle, a Friday Tale. Welcome to another wild story brought to you by Grizzly Collective. I bring madness, mystery, laughs, and real-life chaos straight from the streets. You can grab the merch at GrizzlyCollective1.com and use code for a little thank you from me. Now let's get into it. It was a cold mid-November Friday morning in Bristol, the kind where your breath hangs in the air like you're vaping against your will. The city was already buzzing, coffee shops steaming, scooters whining, buses late as usual. Our storyteller was on his delivery run, parked outside a small corner shop in Bedminster, waiting for his mate to come back with a sausage roll. While he waited, he clocked an elderly woman at the bus stop, absolutely losing her head at a traffic cone. Not a person, not a dog, an actual bright orange cone. She was giving it a full telling off like it owed her money. Out of instinct, he wandered over to check she was all right. The woman spun around, pointed straight at him, and whispered, You're the one they sent." He thought she'd mistaken him for a social worker or something, but before he could reply, she shoved a bag into his hands. It was heavy, tied tight with old twine, and buzzing slightly like there was a phone inside. "Take it to the harbour side," she said, before he realizes it's gone. Then she marched onto the next bus like nothing happened, and disappeared down the road. His mate came back with the sausage roll, took one look at the bag and said, "Bro, if that's a bomb, I'm getting the first train out of Bristol." But curiosity took over, so they jumped back in the van and headed for the harbour side. The bag buzzed again, louder this time. He pulled over by the water, heart going, and finally undid the twine. Inside was a massive tortoise wearing a tiny knitted jumper. They stared at it. The tortoise stared back like it wanted a refund. Attached to the jumper was a note, "Do not let GILD water. He is a runner." Before they could process any of this, a man came sprinting down the pavement yelling, "Stop that tortoise." They turned around, and Gerald was already halfway across the pavement, moving at a speed no tortoise has ever moved in the history of Earth. Instinct kicked in. He scooped up Gerald just before the tortoise launched itself toward the edge like it was about to stage dive into the harbour. The man collapsed in relief. Turns out Gerald was famous locally for escaping every enclosure he'd ever been kept in: animal parks, pet shops, a school science lab, always heading for water for reasons no one understood. The old woman, she wasn't mad at all. She rescued Gerald that morning from some lads trying to film TikToks with him and panicked, handing him off to the first person who looked trustworthy, which apparently was a cold delivery driver outside a shop. The man thanked them, slipped them £50 for the stress, and carried Gerald away like he was holding the crown jewels. As they sat back in the van, they couldn't stop laughing. Only in Bristol could your Friday morning involve chasing a high-speed tortoise that thinks it, Aquaman, and the jaw-dropping twist. Later that day, the local news posted an article. GILD the Great ESCPR saved again thanks to two unknown good SAMITNS. And there in the background of the photo of Gerald was the storyteller's van, clear as day, front page, Bristol's unspoken heroes. This story was brought to you by Grizzly Collective. If you enjoyed the madness, check out the merch at GrizzlyCollective1.com and use code for a little bonus. More stories dropping soon. Every story starts the same way. Welcome to another chapter brought to you by the creative mind behind Grizzly Collective, the place where art, hustle, and real life collide. If you're into sick designs, MMA vibes, football energy, or just pure graft, hit up GrizzlyCollective1.com and use code for 10% off. Now let's get into it. It was a freezing Monday in mid-November. the kind where the sky looks permanently grey and the pavement still glistens from last night's rain. In a small flat just outside Bristol, a lad called Reese sat at the edge of his bed scrolling through his phone, feeling that familiar knot in his stomach. Not panic, just frustration layered from weeks of trying, pushing, grafting, and watching nothing move. He wasn't dramatic about it. He wasn't giving speeches or telling mates he was struggling. He just felt that quiet, heavy exhaustion that hits you when you've been putting effort in and the world hasn't clapped for it yet. He'd been building his little side hustle for months, custom designs, some clothing, some artwork, the odd commission. Sales had slowed to a crawl. Engagement on his page was basically on life support. And over the weekend, after staring at numbers that felt frozen in time, he'd nearly quit. Nearly. But he didn't. Something stopped him. Not inspiration, not motivation, not some dramatic moment. Just a thought. What if I change one thing instead of everything? That Monday morning he decided to test it. No grand plans, no rebranding, just one small adjustment. He picked one product on his site, a design he always liked but never pushed properly, and reshot the photo. Better lighting, cleaner background, a simple mock-up that actually looked like something from a real brand. Then he rewrote the caption so it matched the vibe he wanted. Confident, clear, simple. And for the first time in months, he tweaked the product page too. A tiny cleanup, a sharpened description, nothing dramatic. He posted it, closed the app, and got on with his day. By lunchtime, silence. By late afternoon, still nothing. By the evening, he shrugged it off and put the kettle on. Then his phone buzzed. One message, a simple, "Is this available in medium?" He replied straight away. They ordered. It wasn't a huge sale, but it was the first spark he'd seen in weeks. Reese didn't celebrate. He just nodded, sat back and thought, all right, maybe that worked. Next morning he woke up to 2 more messages, both from people asking about completely different products. That afternoon, another sale came through. By Thursday, traffic to his website had jumped harder than it had in months. And by Sunday night, when he checked his analytics, he realized he'd just had his best week since summer. But here's the wild twist. The customer who made that first sale messaged him again. They said they had been watching his page for ages, literally months, and wanted to buy something before but held off because something about the page felt unfinished. But when they saw the new photo, they thought, okay, this looks proper now. And they bought instantly. That one tiny improvement flipped the entire week, and Reese just sat there on that cold Sunday thinking about how close he had been to binning the whole thing. All it took was one change, not a miracle, not a viral moment, just a small decision to improve something instead of quitting everything. In the days that followed, he switched his whole mindset. Instead of trying to overhaul his brand in one giant push, he started tweaking one small thing every day. A better reel cover, cleaner product descriptions, sharper mock-ups, tidier pages, even better storytelling around his designs. And slowly, consistently, little by little, the momentum returned. Not fast, not flashy, but real. That's the thing people don't realize. Success doesn't usually come from huge dramatic leaps. It comes from quiet, almost invisible adjustments, the ones you barely think matter. Reese didn't change his whole life, he just changed one thing, and that one thing changed everything. So when Monday came around again, cold, sharp, unforgiving, he wasn't intimidated anymore. He stuck on his hoodie, stepped outside into the Bristol chill, and breathed out a cloud of steam like a man ready to build something brick by tiny brick. Because that's all momentum is, small wins stacked until they become an avalanche. And here's the truth he learned the hard way. The win always shows up right after the moment you almost gave up. If you're building something and feel like no one's watching, change one thing today. One small step, one small improvement, that's all it takes to restart the story. Thanks for sticking around for another chapter. If you want to support the journey and grab something sick, check out GrizzlyCollective.com and use code for 10% off. Stay grinding, stay growing, and I'll see you in the next story. On this page you'll find real stories, real lessons, and real madness from everyday life. I'm all about grit, humor, courage, and building something from nothing. If you enjoy these tailies, check out my artwork and apparel at GrizzlyCollective.com and use code GRZZ10 for 10% off. Now settle in, let's go. A few weeks back, 3 lads decided to do a quick road trip up to Scotland. Nothing serious, just a cold November weekend escape. They grabbed energy drinks, loaded the playlist with old UK bangers and hit the motorway, laughing all the way past Birmingham, Manchester and right through the Lake District. The roads were empty, the hills were misty and everything felt sound. Classic lads trip. But once they crossed into Scotland, the weather turned proper rogue. Fog rolled in like something out of a horror film, thick, grey and moving low across the road. They slowed down, joking they were about to meet Nessie at the nearest roundabout. Still, the vibes stayed high, until they turned onto one of those narrow rural roads where you barely get two cars passing. That's when everything flipped. The fog thinned just enough for the headlights to catch something twisted on the road ahead, a car, completely totaled. Nose first into a ditch, back end smashed, hazard lights barely blinking like dying fireflies. The lads pulled up immediately, the joke's gone, adrenaline slamming through all three of them. They shouted out, no answer. They checked the car driver door ripped open, airbags blown, but no one inside. Not a soul, just silence and the wind moving the trees. Their phones had 1 bar of signal if they were lucky. The road was dead. Then the strangest thing, muddy footprints, leading away from the crasher into the woods. Every part of them said leave it, but something stronger kicked in. Courage, stupidity, doesn't matter, they followed the tracks. Torches shaking slightly, the cold biting, their breaths fogging in the air as the forest swallowed the sound around them. The path went deeper, weaving between trees, until suddenly the footsteps stopped. Just stopped. No turning, no sliding, no branching off. Gone. The lads looked at each other, frozen, and then they heard it, footsteps behind them. Not in front, not from the crash, from behind, slow, heavy, crunching over leaves. They spun round, hearts hammering, only to see a man stumbling out of the darkness. Cuts on his head, coat torn, eyes wide like he'd just sprinted away from death itself. He collapsed right in front of them. The first words out of his mouth were, "I thought nobody would find me." Turns out he'd swerved to avoid a stag on the road, lost control, crashed, climbed out dazed and tried to walk for help, but ended up circling through the woods disoriented for hours. He said he heard their car before he saw their lights. The footsteps behind were actually him finally catching up to them. The lads carried him to the road, wrapped him in jackets and kept him talking until emergency services finally reached them. Later that night, the paramedics said straight, if they hadn't stopped, the man wouldn't have made it through the night. The trip that started with banter, motorway snacks and stupid playlists turned into a night of courage they never expected. Cold, fog, fear and instincts kicking in when it mattered most. A proper reminder that sometimes the strongest people are the ones who act before they think, and walk toward danger when everyone else would keep driving. That's the story for today. Keep pushing, keep building, keep showing up, and remember, greatness grows in the moments where you choose courage over comfort. For more stories and designs, visit GrizzlyCollective.com and use code GRIZZ10 for 10% off. Stay sharp, stay moving, stay real. Cold, brutal November morning, 4 degrees C. That kind of cold where your breath looks like dragon smoke and the pavement feels like it's plotting against you. Welcome back to GrizzlyReels, where the stories are real, the chaos is British, and the grind never stops. New week, new madness. Don't forget to check out GrizzlyCollective.com and use code for a cheeky discount. So this lad, let's call him the brave genius, decides he's walking to the shop instead of driving because fresh air will wake me up. In 4 degrees C, before sunrise, streets empty, ice everywhere, British optimism at its finest. He's halfway down the road when he spots it. A frozen puddle. Not just any puddle, one of those long, shiny, perfectly smooth ice sheets that looks like it belongs in the Winter Olympics. He nods to himself like he's about to perform for a crowd of thousands. No one's around, easy slide, I'll be graceful. He takes a run up, steps on the ice, and instantly becomes Bambi on roller skates. His legs go north and south, his arms go east and west. Gravity grabs him by the ankles like it's owed money, and he slams straight through the ice like a stone through a window. The puddle wasn't a puddle. It was a hidden pothole. A deep one. He's submerged to the waist in 4 degrees C water. Socks, trousers, pride gone. He lets out a squeal so high-pitched that even the pigeons look offended. Then instinct kicks in. He launches out the hole like a salmon escaping a bear and sprints, full speed, through the estate. Shoes squelching, clothes freezing stiff as he runs, steam coming off him like he's overheating in the Antarctic. Someone walking their dog sees him fly past and just whispers, "Is you all right, mate?" But he's too busy trying not to become a human ice sculpture. He bursts through his front door, soaking, shivering, borderline blue, and jumps into the hottest shower known to mankind. Nearly boiled himself alive. But he survived. And the lesson: never trust a shiny puddle in November. It's not your friend. It's a trap set by the universe to humble you. Cheers for tuning in to GrizzlyReels, where the laughs are real, the stories are wild, and the grind stays hungry. Hit the site grizzlycollective1.com and use grizzly10 for a discount. Stay warm, stay sharp, and watch your step, literally. Here is one thing you should know before we begin. I share real stories for real people. Stories about grit, ambition, and the quiet battles nobody sees. If you are building something, chasing something, or trying to become something, these stories are for you. And if you want to support the journey, check out grizzlycollective1.com and use the code GIZZ10 for a little boost along the way. It was a cold, grey Monday morning in late November, the kind where the sky looks like wet concrete and the whole world feels half asleep. Most people were dragging themselves to work with that classic Monday reluctance, but not Adam. Adam was already in his van by 6:30, heating barely working, coffee flask already empty, and the roads still slick with frost. He was determined to make this week different. No more waiting for motivation to appear. He wanted to chase it. His first job was out near the national park, a remote delivery to a cottage hidden at the foot of an old walking trail. The kind of place you only find if you already know it exists. As he drove deeper into the countryside, the fog thickened, settling low over the fields until everything looked like a scene from a crime drama. Most people would have been spooked. Adam loved it. It felt like the world was daring him to take the day head-on. Halfway there he spotted a woman by the roadside, car bonnet open, steam rising into the cold air. He slowed, pulled over and asked if she was all right. She laughed and said her battery had died and her phone had 1% left. Typical Monday luck. Adam grabbed his jump leads, got her started, and before she drove off she told him something simple that stuck with him. Don't rush the day, own it. He carried that with him up the trail as he walked the final stretch to the cottage parcel under one arm, boots crunching through frost. The path was narrow, icy, and surrounded by towering pines that groaned in the wind. Halfway up he slipped, almost went flying, managed to grab a branch and haul himself upright again. For a moment, he just stood there, heart hammering, muttering under his breath about how this job was going to finish him one day. But then he laughed. A proper belly laugh, because he realized something. Every time life tried to knock him on his ass, he stayed standing. Maybe that was the win. When he finally reached the cottage, the old man who answered the door looked like he'd stepped out of a history book, wool jumper, thick beard, eyes full of mischief. He invited Adam in for a warm drink, insisting nobody leaves his doorstep frozen. They spoke for 10 minutes, maybe 15, but the old man said something that hit even harder than the woman's advice. People think big days start with big moments, he said. They don't. They start with one small decision. One step. One act of carrying on, even when you could turn back. By the time Adam left, the fog had lifted, the sky had cracked open to pale winter blue, and he felt something he hadn't felt on a Monday in years. Momentum. Not because work was easy or the morning had gone smoothly, but because he had chosen to lean into the chaos instead of backing away from it. He realized that maybe that is what adventure really is. Not climbing mountains or crossing oceans. Just choosing to keep moving when everything around you feels like a reason to quit. As he walked back down the trail, he felt ready for the week. Not because it would be perfect, but because he was. And sometimes that is enough to change everything. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of grit, hustle, and cold mornings turned into victories, you know where to find me. Check out grizzlycollective1.com for artwork and gear built for people who keep pushing, and use the code GIZZ10 for a little thank you for being here. Stay sharp, stay moving, and remember this. Mondays don't decide your week, you do. Here is one thing you should know before we begin. I share real stories for real people. Stories about grit, ambition, and the quiet battles nobody sees. If you are building something, chasing something, or trying to become something, these stories are for you. And if you want to support the journey, check out grizzlycollective1.com and use the code GIZZ10 for a little boost along the way. It was the end of November and the whole country felt frozen, like someone had paused the world. The rain had turned into that icy mist that clings to your clothes, and the sky sat heavy and dark over the rooftops. Most people were just trying to get through the week, but Tom was walking into the toughest morning he had faced in months. Work had dried up, bills were piling up. The pressure was stretching him thin, and he was starting to believe he was losing, but he still got up. Still put his boots on, still walked out the door. He was heading to a job interview in the city, a last-minute opportunity someone had mentioned to him in passing. He did not expect much, but it was something, a reason to try again. He caught the early train, the kind where everyone sits silent, half asleep, staring at their reflections in the dark window. Tom sat there thinking about everything he had been through this year, the setbacks, the doubts, the stress that never seemed to ease. He felt like he was holding himself together by willpower alone. When he got off the train, the weather was brutal. Freezing wind slicing down the high street, sheets of rain hitting sideways, the pavement shiny like glass. As he crossed the road, he spotted something ahead. A car stuck at the lights, engine dead, hazard lights blinking, steam rising from the bonnet. Behind it, an older man was struggling to push it out of the lane. Cars beeped, people walked past, nobody helping. Tom did not even think. He jogged over, shoved his shoulder against the boot, and pushed with everything he had. The man looked shocked but grateful. Together they rolled the car to safety under a bus stop roof. The old man shook his hand and said, "Thank you, son, you have just saved my morning." Tom smiled, shrugged it off, and carried on running toward the interview, his coat drenched, his shoes soaked. By the time he arrived, he looked like he had been dragged through a river, but the receptionist just laughed and handed him a towel. The manager came out, saw the state of him, and asked if everything was all right. Tom explained what happened, and the man raised his eyebrows, then said something Tom did not expect. "If you help strangers in the middle of a storm, you will definitely show up for the people you work with. Sit down, let's talk." The interview turned into a conversation, and the conversation turned into an offer, right there on the spot. A full-time position, decent pay, solid hours, a fresh start at the exact moment he needed one most. It was the first proper win he had felt in months. Walking back to the station, the rain had stopped, the clouds were clearing, and even though the city was still grey, Tom felt lighter, like someone had finally lifted the weight off his shoulders. When he got home, he sat on the edge of his bed and realized something. Proud moments do not always come when life is perfect. Sometimes they show up in the middle of stressed-out cold mornings and chaos. Sometimes the strongest victories are the ones nobody will ever see except you. And that is what makes them powerful. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of grit, hustle, and real-life wins, you know where to find me. Check out grizzlycollective1.com for artwork and gear built for people who keep pushing, and use GIZZ10 for a small thank you for being part of the journey. Stay sharp, stay moving, and remember this: tough times do not last, tough people do. Friday morning hits different. It's that moment the whole week has been building towards: quiet streets, cold air, and that little switch flicking in your head that says, "Right, let's go." There's this lad's same routine every week. Monday he's tired, Tuesday he's thinking, Wednesday he's grinding, Thursday he's surviving. But Friday is when something wakes up inside him. He steps out the door, hood up, headphones in, trainers laced. The sun hasn't even bothered to show up yet, but he's already moving like he's got somewhere important to be, because he has. He's got a promise to keep. A promise to himself that he won't end this week the same way he started it. A promise that no matter how heavy the days felt, he'd finish strong. A promise that when the weekend lands, he can look at himself and think, "Yeah, I earned that." He walks past the people moaning about work, the ones dragging their feet, the ones waiting for life to happen to them. He ain't waiting. He's creating. Every Friday morning he flips the script, turns doubt into fuel, pressure into power, and routine into momentum. Because while everyone else is counting down the hours, he's counting the opportunities. And that's the thing about Fridays. It's not the end of the week. It's the launch pad for the life you're building. So if you're reading this right now, remember this. Today's the day you set the tone. Today's the day you move different. Today's the day you step into the weekend like a storm that's been waiting to be unleashed. Walk into today with purpose. Move like you're meant for more. It's Friday. Switch on, step up. Run it like a grizzly.
Monday morning, reset. It's Monday, grey skis, lukewarm coffee, same bus, same routine. But today, the vibe's different. Because every lad's got that mate, the one who sits next to you, nudges your arm, and drops a mini TED talk without even realizing it. You sit down half asleep, headphones in, already thinking about quitting your job. Then your mate jumps on the bus, breathing like he's run a marathon to make it. He looks at you and goes, "Bro, listen, Monday isn't the enemy. It's just leg day for life. No one likes it, everyone moans about it. But it's the one thing that actually makes you stronger." You laugh, thinking he's chatting breeze. But he keeps going. Every legend you look up to. They cracked on when they didn't feel like it. Champions aren't built on Fridays. They're built on Mondays, when you drag yourself out of bed and do the things future you will rate. He sips his can of Monster at 8:04 a.m. like it's meditation and ads. And bruv, think about it. If Monday didn't exist, half the lads would never get their life together. This is where the graft starts, where we leave the lazy version of us behind. Today's the warm-up for the man you're about to become. And for the first time ever, you realize the man's actually spitting facts. You look out the window, sun peeking through the clouds, and suddenly Monday doesn't feel like an enemy anymore. It feels like a fresh start. By the time the bus stops, you're both buzzing. Two lads stepping off like you're walking into round one of the week. Different mindset, different energy. Monday. Completed it, mate.
Hello and welcome to GrizzlyReels, where I share real stories packed with adventure, laughs, and a bit of grit. This one's called Midweek Mayhem. It was a chilly Wednesday morning in the English countryside, and Tom and his mate Dave had decided to escape the grind for a bit of midweek adventure. Nothing fancy, just a few hours exploring some local trails outside Manchester, backpacks packed with sandwiches, thermos of coffee, and a camera for a bit of content. The lads were walking along a narrow path lined with frost-covered hedges, joking about who would slip first. Tom, always the confident one, decided to impress Dave by taking a shortcut over a small frozen brook. One step and his foot shot out from under him like a banana peel in a slapstick film. Dave burst out laughing as Tom skidded halfway across the ice, arms flailing, before plunging into the shallow water on the other side. He came up sputtering, soaked to the bone, while Dave couldn't stop laughing, tears streaming down his face. Instead of sulking, Tom grinned, shook the water off, and announced they needed to find a warm spot fast. They stumbled across a tiny, tucked-away village cafe, the kind of place with a wood-burning stove and smell of fresh pastries. The owner, a cheerful old lady, saw them shivering and immediately threw them hot tea and a plate of bacon sandwiches. As they sat warming up, Dave whispered, "Mate, this will make one hell of a story." Tom laughed, "Exactly. Mondays are brutal, Wednesdays are worse, but stories like this, worth every soggy sock." By the time they left the cafe, the sun had broken through the clouds, glinting off the frost-covered fields. They made their way home, full of laughs, full of energy, and with a story they knew they'd be telling for years. The adventure wasn't perfect, they'd been cold, wet, and ridiculous, but it reminded them that midweek doesn't have to be boring, and a little misadventure makes life feel alive. Thanks for listening to this midweek mayhem. If you enjoyed this one, check out Grizzly Collective, one for art and gear made for people who keep moving, keep laughing, and keep chasing stories. Use code for a little boost, and remember, life, too short to take Wednesdays seriously.
Mate, it's Friday morning, and the entire country is running on fumes and pure stubbornness. Every bloke in Britain has the same look on his face, that let's just survive till 5 p.m. stare. But this morning, something felt different, something felt dangerous. And this is where the story begins. So this lad, Connor, jumps on the train half asleep, hood up, headphones in, surviving the morning with a coffee that tastes like disappointment. The train doors shut, the heaters kick in, and everyone instantly fogs up like a herd of tired dragons. Connor sits down next to his mate Dan, who looks like he's been awake since 1987. He whispers, "Bro, I swear I nearly quit life when my alarm went off." But before the misery could settle, something switched in Connor's head, the Friday switch, that hidden gear only British workers understand. He leans in and goes, "Mate, hear me out. It's Friday. We've done the hard miles. All we need to do is survive today, and freedom is waiting for us like a cold pint on a sunny day." Dan looks at him, half asleep, half inspired. Connor continues, "Listen, every Friday is a mission, a final boss fight, the last hill, but once we climb it, we get 2 days of peace, food, sleep, and pretending we've got our lives together." The whole carriage goes silent, but everyone's ears perk up. A woman nods. A builder smirks. Even the ticket inspector slows down like, "Go on, lad, preach." Connor stands up slightly, raises his miserable coffee like a battle flag, and announces, "Everyone, it's Friday. We've suffered. We've survived. Today we finish strong, and then we rest like warriors." Mate, the train cheered. Well, not loudly. But at least 3 people breathed heavier, which counts. And right there, in that fogged-up, freezing, half-dead British train, everyone felt it. The Friday lift-off. So if you're reading this, remember, you've battled Monday's chaos. You've survived Wednesday's madness. And now it's Friday, the final push. Finish strong and let the weekend carry you home. Let's go, champs. Friday mode activated.
Bruv, you ever have one of those Mondays where life tries to yeet you straight back into bed, but somehow, you end up winning anyway? Yeah, this is one of those stories. So this geezer Dan climbs on the bus Monday morning, eyes half open, coffee lukewarm, motivation hanging on by a thread, proper do I really need this job vibes. The bus is rammed, everyone looks like they've been dragged through Sunday backwards. Dan grabs the pole, headphone in, ready for a miserable journey. Then it happens. The bus jolts. Dan's coffee flies. A tiny splash hits the bloke next to him, a massive brick of a man built like he eats dumbbells for breakfast. Dan freezes, everyone watches. Brickman slowly turns his head. Dan thinks, this is it, I'm getting folded on a Monday. But the big lad just grins and goes, don't worry mate, Monday's already slapped me harder than that. The whole bus LAUGHS. Energy changes instantly. People unclench, a few smiles, even a joke from the driver. Dan sits down thinking. Mad how one tiny moment can flip the whole day. And somewhere between stop 7 and 12, he realizes something. Mondays aren't the enemy. Your attitude is the map. And sometimes all it takes is one good moment, even a stupid one, to turn the whole week around. By the time he gets off the bus, man, walking like it's the first day of a new chapter. It's head up, coffee gone but spirit restored. Because sometimes the win isn't big, it's just the fact you kept moving. And that's the Monday message, lad. One small shift can flip your whole week. One laugh, one moment, one decision to not let life defeat you before 9 am. If you needed a sign, this is it. Monday is yours. Go get it. Wednesday morning drops on you like a wet brick. Cold air, grey clouds. That midweek, can I be asked, feeling settling in like a council tax bill. But this story starts with one lad, and a ladder, and a lesson. So there's this electrician from Bolton called Steve. Good lad, hard worker, bit rough round the edges but heart of gold. Every Wednesday he's on the same site, climbing the same old rattly ladder to fix some broken light that always gives him grief. This week though, it's freezing, ladder's iced, his hands are stiff, one slip and he's doing a backwards swan dive into a pile of gravel. The apprentice says, mate, just leave it for tomorrow. But Steve just laughs. He says, if I leave today's job for tomorrow, then tomorrow becomes twice as hard. Not happening, lad. So he climbs. Halfway up the ladder wobbles. He steadies it with one hand, heart going like a drum solo, breath steaming in the air. Most people would have climbed back down, but not Steve. He goes, not today, not this week, not a chance. And he keeps climbing step by step, until he reaches the top, fixes the light, and the whole site lights up like he's powered the sun. He comes down and the apprentice just stares at him like he's bloody Thor. And Steve says the line everyone needs on a Wednesday. When the week tries to wobble your ladder, you don't climb down, you just grip harder. Because that's midweek grit. Not fancy speeches, not big dramatic moments. Just a lad refusing to let Wednesday win. So if your ladder's shaking today, crack on anyway. You're stronger than the cold, the doubt, the tiredness and the excuses. Wednesday isn't here to break you. It's here to prove you can't be broken.
Here is one thing you should know before we begin. I share real stories for real people. Stories about grit, ambition, and the quiet battles nobody sees. If you are building something, chasing something, or trying to become something, these stories are for you. And if you want to support the journey, check out grizzlycollective1.com and use the code GIZZ10 for a little boost along the way. It was a freezing Friday morning in England, the kind where your breath hangs in the air like smoke and even the bus seats feel haunted. Dan was sat there half asleep, hood up, hands stuffed in his pockets, when his mate Jay jumped on the bus looking like he'd slept through a hurricane. You ready, lad? Jay said, grinning like a man who just remembered how good life can be. Weekend adventure. No plans, no rules, just whatever happens. By 9:30, they ditched work, grabbed 2 meal deals and hit the motorway heading north. The plan was simple: follow the road until something interesting happens, and something always does. By the time they crossed into the Lake District, the sky had turned a bright icy blue, the mountains dusted with snow, and both of them buzzed with that Friday freedom feeling. Music blasting, windows down, cold air punching them in the face, proper British road trip energy. They stopped at a little village for a brew, and the old lady serving them told them about a hidden waterfall only locals knew. "It's a bit of a climb," she warned, which obviously meant they were doing it. The trail was muddy, slippery, proper. If you fall here, your mates laugh first, then check your alive terrain. Halfway up, Dan's foot went from under him and he slid 10 feet down the path on his ass. Jay nearly collapsed laughing. Dan shouted back, "I'm fine, I'm built for this." Even though he definitely was. But when they finally reached the waterfall's silence, nothing but the sound of the water crashing, the cold mist on their faces, and that rare moment where life feels bigger than the stress you carry. For a couple minutes, neither of them said a word. It was just peace. Then Jay ruined it by throwing a snowball at Dan's head. Later, on the drive back, the sky turned pink, the roads were quiet, and they realized something. They didn't need a massive plan. They didn't need a big budget. They didn't need to escape life. They just needed a day of choosing adventure instead of autopilot. And maybe that's the real lesson for every weekend warrior out there. You don't need everything perfect, you just need to go, put yourself somewhere new, make a memory you didn't plan, laugh until your ribs hurt. Life feels different when you give it a chance. Because the best adventures don't happen in fancy hotels or exotic islands. They happen in muddy boots, cold hands, stupid decisions, and good company. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of grit, hustle, and normal days turned legendary, you know where to find me. Check out GrizzlyCollective1.com for artwork and gear built for people who keep pushing, and use GrizzlyReels10 for a little thank you for being here. Stay sharp, stay moving, and enjoy your weekend.
Here is one thing worth remembering before the week starts properly. This time of year feels strange for everyone. The lights are up, the holidays are close, and half the world has already mentally clocked off. But this week still counts. It was Monday morning, 15th of December. Cold enough to sting your face, dark like it was still half asleep, and the roads packed with people already fed up before 9. Someone stood on a freezing platform waiting for a delayed train, coffee gone cold, listening to 2 lads arguing about whether it was even worth trying this week. One of them laughed and said, "It's basically Christmas, mate. What's the point?" That sentence hung in the air longer than it should have. Because the truth is, this week is where most people disappear. Effort drops, standards slip, motivation goes on holiday early, and quietly, without anyone noticing, opportunities get handed to the ones who stay switched on. By Wednesday, the excuses are everywhere. "I'll start fresh in January. I'll sort it after Christmas. It's been a long year." Fair enough, it has been. But that is exactly why this week matters. This is the week where you finish strong when everyone else is coasting. The week where you tidy loose ends, send the message you've been putting off, put in that final push, and leave the year with your head held high. Not for anyone else, for yourself. There is something powerful about knowing you didn't mentally clock out early, about sitting down on Christmas Day knowing you earned the rest. No guilt, no unfinished business rattling around your head, just calm. The funny thing is, this week never looks heroic while you're in it. It's quiet, it's cold, it's graft when no one is watching, but it sets the tone for how you step into the new year. So if you're reading this on a grey Monday in England, wrapping up warm, dragging yourself into work, remember this. Make this week count, not with stress, not with burnout, just with intention. Finish the year like someone who respects their own effort. That alone puts you ahead of most people.
Friday afternoon, late November, freezing wind cutting through the high street like it had a personal vendetta. Tom and Lewis were sat in the cab of a battered white transit outside a builder's merchant in Sheffield, heater on full blast, arguing about whether to sack the day off early or graft through the last job. Tom checked his phone, one missed call, unknown number. Lewis laughed, probably another scam, ignore it. Tom didn't. On the other end was a bloke called Mark, calm voice, local accent. Said he'd found Tom's name through a mate of a mate, needed help moving equipment out of an old unit before the landlord locked it Monday morning. Cash job that night. Lewis raised an eyebrow. Friday night, in this weather, dodgy unit, sounds like a horror film. They went anyway. The place was an abandoned industrial yard on the edge of town. Rusted gates, floodlights flickering, wind howling through broken windows like it had lungs. Mark was there waiting, alone, wrapped up in a coat too thin for the cold. Inside were heavy tool cabinets, old machines, boxes stacked to the ceiling. No drama, just graft. 3 hours in, hands numb, backs aching, Lewis muttered he wished they'd stayed in the pub. Then Mark said something offhand that changed everything. He thanked them properly, said he'd lost his business 6 months earlier, divorce, debt, nearly lost his flat. This unit was the last thing tying him to the old life, and he couldn't face clearing it alone. No violin music, just facts. They finished just before midnight. Mark paid them and shook both their hands like it meant something. As they drove off, Lewis sat quiet for a minute, then said, "You know what, I needed this more than the money." Monday morning, Tom checked his phone again. Another message, same unknown number. Mark had recommended them to a contractor he knew. Big job, consistent work, no chasing payments, no nonsense. By the end of the week, Tom and Lewis had more booked work than they'd had all year. Funny thing is, they nearly said no, nearly chose comfort, nearly went home early. Sometimes the win doesn't come dressed as success. Sometimes it shows up cold, late, inconvenient, and asking if you can do one more job. And the mad part, that's usually the one that changes everything. Here is one thing you should know before we begin. I share real stories about real people. Stories about graft, chaos, bad decisions, and the moments that somehow turn into memories you never forget. If you have ever chased something small that felt massive at the time, this one is for you. It was the last working Friday before Christmas in England was frozen solid. The kind of cold where your breath hurts your face and your hands stop working 5 minutes into the day. Ben the postman was out in his usual uniform, which meant shorts, battered trainers, and a red Royal Mail jacket, doing absolutely nothing against the wind. Every letter felt heavier than the last. Every step crunched. Every old lady told him he was mad for wearing shorts again. But Ben had a mission. Smith's toy store closed at 6, and there was one thing left on his Christmas list. A single box of Pokémon cards, not for resale, not for profit, pure nostalgia, a bit of childhood joy before the year ended. By 5:30, he was sprinting the final street, sack half empty, legs numb, sweat freezing to his skin. He burst into Smith's with 2 minutes to spare, only to be met by a teenage lad behind the till shaking his head. "Gone, mate, last one sold 10 minutes ago." Ben stood there deflated, red-faced, breathing like he'd just run a marathon. Then the lad added, "We do have one reserved. Rotherham branch, pick up before close." Ben checked the time, 15 minutes. "Impossible." He rang Ricky. Ricky answered, already laughing. "You're joking. It's freezing and you want to drive to Rotherham for Pokémon cards." Ben said one sentence, "Last one." That was enough. They flew out of the car park like they were in a low-budget action film. Heater blasting, windows fogged, Ricky driving like the road owed him money. Ben in the passenger seat, refreshing Google Maps like it might change its mind. They skidded into Rotherham with 3 minutes to spare, ran across the car park slipping on ice, burst through the doors breathless and red-faced. The box was there. The lad behind the counter smiled and said, "You Ben, yeah." Ben nodded. Then came the twist. The lad leaned in and said, "Funny thing is, the bloke who reserved it rang earlier and said he couldn't make it. Told us to give it to the postman in shorts if he turned up." Ben froze. The name on the receipt was the same name as the old bloke on his route, who every morning handed him a biscuit and said, "Keep grafting, lad." Ben walked out, holding the box like it was gold. On the drive home, Ricky said, "You realize that whole thing was ridiculous. Ben nodded and smiled. Because sometimes the universe doesn't reward the sensible choice. Sometimes it rewards the mad sprint, the freezing legs, the extra effort at the end of a long year. And that is how a box of Pokémon cards turned into the best Friday of the year. If you enjoyed this story and you're still grafting while everyone else is clocking off, remember this. The wins don't always look important, they just feel important when you earn them. Stay moving, stay ridiculous, and never underestimate what one more push can bring.
Monday morning, frozen pavements, last working week of the year, alarms going off like sirens. And somewhere in a tiny terraced house in the Midlands, Brian's phone was vibrating like a dodgy washing machine. Brian rolled out of bed feeling like someone had replaced his brain with wet bread. Still wearing last night's hoodie, still smelling faintly of kebab and regrets. He checked the date, Monday 22nd December, the final lap of the year. He grabbed his phone and rang the only man who'd understand the state he was in, Paul. Paul answered on the second ring. Voice croaky, breath heavy, like he'd aged 40 years overnight. Bruv, what happened in Swansea? Brian asked. Silent. Then a cough. Then Paul said, Mate, we should not be allowed out unsupervised. They spent the whole walk to work piecing together the chaos. The taxi driver who insisted on rapping Stormzy lyrics, even though he was 64. The group of lads who challenged them to a dance-off in Pop World and beat them. The bloke with a mullet who swore blind he was Tom Jones' nephew. And then, the girl. Brian remembered her just enough to cringe. The girl from the kebab shop. Laugh like Christmas lights. Eyes too pretty for that hour of the night. She'd handed him his chips, smiled, and said, You're trouble, aren't you? He'd meant to ask for her name. It's her number. Anything. Instead, he'd said something stupid like, Do you do loyalty cards? And she'd laughed, that proper belly laugh, the one he'd been hearing in his head all weekend. Paul was still ranting about how Brian should have asked her name when Brian reached the office door. He swiped in, nodded at the security guard, walked toward HR because he needed to hand in a form. And then he froze, standing at the little HR desk. New badge, new lanyard, fresh start on a Monday morning. So, the exact same girl from the kebab shop. Hair tied up, winter coat still on. A smile he'd recognize in a blackout. She looked up at him, paused, tilted her head, smiled. Your trouble, are you? She said again, same tone, same spark. Brian didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't overthink it like he normally would. Instead he said, calm as anything. Only on weekends, I'm Brian. She laughed, that same laugh, brighter than the office lights. Held out her hand. Jessica. And just like that, the last week of the year didn't feel like something to survive anymore. It felt like something to run toward. Mad how life works. You can spend a whole weekend searching for something you think you've lost, only for it to walk right into your workplace on a Monday morning. Right when you need a lift the most. Last week of the year, lads, finish strong. Your next plot twist might already be walking through the door. It was the 24th of December, cold as a freezer in Manchester, wind cutting through the streets like it had a vendetta. Jamie had been up since 6, juggling 2 jobs and dreaming bigger than the small flat he rented above the chippy. His mate Ollie was already waiting outside the corner shop, scarf tight, coffee in hand, grumbling about the frostbite forming on his ears. Are you ready for this madness? Ollie shouted. Jamie grinned, hands shoved in pockets. Always am. The plan was simple but brutal. Deliver one last freelance design to a client across town, pick up a package for a sneaky Christmas gift, and then meet Zara at the Christmas market. Easy, right, if you ignore the weather, the traffic, and the fact Jamie's bike had a flat and Ollie's scooter had seen better days. As they weaved through the icy streets, Jamie kept calling his client, explaining he'd be there any minute, teeth chattering. Half an hour in, a puddle disguised as black ice sent Jamie skidding spectacularly, arms flailing, landing with a wet thump that soaked through his socks and trousers. Ollie laughed so hard he nearly crashed into a lamppost. "You okay, mate?" Jamie gave a thumbs up, wet socks and all, muttering something about earning his winter stripes. By midday they'd made it to the client, delivered the design, and collected the package. A rare pair of sneakers Jamie had promised Zara for Christmas, the last ones in stock across the city. Success? Not yet. On the way to the market, a dodgy intersection and a distracted driver left the sneakers teetering dangerously on Ollie's scooter. Jamie lunged, half running, half sliding across the frozen tarmac, grabbing them just before disaster. Heart pounding, breath steaming, he couldn't help laughing. "Adrenaline makes Christmas shopping epic," he gasped. Finally, they arrived at the market, lights twinkling, the scent of roasted chestnuts in the air. Zara was there, her coat too big, scarf wrapped twice, eyes scanning. Jamie's nerves kicked in, every little stumble and skid flashing through his head. But when she saw the sneakers in his hands and the ridiculous state he was in, wet, windblown, exhausted, she laughed, a proper belly laugh. "You've gone through hell for me, haven't you?" she said, taking them from him, eyes sparkling. Jamie grinned, shrugging. "Hell nah, just Monday on Christmas Eve." They wandered through the market, shared a hot chocolate, and Jamie realized something big. Grit pays off, persistence is sexy, and sometimes the riskier the gamble, the sweeter the win. That box of sneakers. A symbol not just of a gift, but of showing up when it counts, taking the shot and getting the girl. By the time Jamie and Ollie headed home, frost forming on eyelashes, feet numb but spirits high, Jamie knew this was one for the books. Money earned, heart racing, girl impressed, lesson learned. Life rewards the brave, the funny, the relentless, and the ones willing to tumble through the chaos to grab what matters. As the snow fell lightly over the city, Jamie thought, maybe that's Christmas magic after all. The hustle, the heart, the grit, and the glory all wrapped in one cold, beautiful, unforgettable day. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of pure grit, humor, and getting the win when it counts, you know where to find me. Check out GrizzlyCollective1.com for artwork, gear, and a little festive boost with the code GIZZ10. Stay sharp, keep moving, and remember, sometimes the last lap before Christmas is the one that changes everything.